Hello everyone, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to our Sage 50 Cloud Payroll webinar, all about the IR Secure Mailbox. My name's Duncan, I'm your host and presenter for the session today, but we are joined by my colleague Calvin, who's standing by in the background, ready to answer any questions that you might have. So let's now take a look at what we're going to cover in the webinar. So first up, we're going to explain how to set up your IR Secure Mailbox in the software. We're then going to look at how to check for notifications and automatically apply changes to things like tax codes or student loan status. We're going to take a look at the P46 Car submission, which is another feature of the Secure Mailbox. And then I'm going to share my 4 top tips all around setting up and using this feature. And then at the end, we will have time to stick around to give you that chance to send through any of your final questions. So first up, we're going to explain how to set up the IR Secure Mailbox. And there's a couple of things you'll need, one of which should already be stored in your software. So the first thing is it requires a user ID and password to log into HMRC's PAYE online service. Now, these are the same details that you would use to submit your payroll to HMRC. So they should already be stored in your e-submission settings. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do submissions. But I will show you where those settings are found and how to check those and your contact details. And secondly, if you currently receive paper notifications from HMRC, so if you get your tax code notices in the post on paper, you will need to switch to electronic notices. Now, the way that you do this is by signing in to your PAYE online service. There's a link on this handout, gov.uk/PAYE-online, and from there you'll find the setting to switch from paper notifications to electronic. And once you've done that, you will then be able to retrieve your notifications directly in your payroll software. Now, some of you might be doing that already, and at this point I do have a quick poll to find out how you guys are currently receiving your tax code notifications. So if you take a look on screen, I've just launched the poll. I've got 4 different options and an other. So how do you currently receive tax code notices for your employees? And if you could answer by selecting either the IR Secure Mailbox in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, perhaps you sign in to HMRC's PAYE online service in your usual web browser. You might use HMRC's PAYE desktop viewer, or some of you might still get paper notices in the post. So have a look through those options. If none of that applies to you, you can always choose other. I'd be interested to know how you get the notifications if it's not one of those methods. But once we've had most of the votes in, I will just share those overall results with you. And we will then move on and take a look at setting this up. So we've got just about 80% of the votes in. It seems to be pretty close between 3 of the options. I'll give you a few more seconds to submit a response, and then we will close that down. And I will, as promised, just share the results. So currently, it's a pretty even 3-way split. 35% of you still receiving paper notices in the post. So in order to use the Secure Mailbox in your software, you will need to switch to electronic notices. And as I say, you'd log into your PAYE online account to do that. And then we've got 29% using the mailbox in Sage 50 Cloud Payroll, and 29% just using the PAYE online service in a browser. So for those of you that do already use it, hopefully you'll learn a bit more about it. There's some of the features you may not be using. And if you're using the online service in your browser, this should hopefully save you a bit of time and would help to reduce any errors when it comes to applying those notices. And then we had 6% as well on the desktop viewer. So thanks for joining in there if you got the chance. We're now going to take a look at the e-submission settings. So I'm going to give you a demo on this. So I'll just bring the slides down. And in Sage Payroll, if you go to your e-submissions tasks down here in the bottom left corner, you'll need to go into e-submission settings. And then here within the settings, you should already have your company name and your PAYE reference. And this is also where you store the user ID and password. So as I say, it's the same details that are used to submit your payroll to HMRC. And as long as you've enabled electronic notifications on your PAYE online account, it would use these same credentials to allow you to receive these in the software. Now, a couple of options just to point out. There is a tick box if you'd like to automatically check for new messages when you open the Secure Mailbox, rather than clicking on a new mail option. It can take a few seconds to check and retrieve the notification, so I'm going to leave that switched off, and I'm just going to check for them on demand. And then there's another checkbox in relation to P46 car submissions, which I'll cover briefly towards the end of the webinar. Now, while you're checking your e-submission settings, it's always worth making sure your contact details are up to date. So if you click onto the contact details tab, you should make sure you've got contact name, telephone number, and email address. This is included in your submissions to HMRC, and you should receive the confirmation of a successful submission to the email address that you've entered here. So you'd have your details entered here, or if you're an agent submitting on behalf of a client, you would have your kind of agent, you would tick this box and enter your agent details. So those are the settings. Everything should be in place. The only thing you might need to change is the electronic notifications setting, and that's done on your PAYE online account. And that's us set up and ready to start using the mailbox. So a quick recap of where we found that. It's from the e-submissions tasks, e-submission settings. You may want to tick the box to automatically check for new messages. It's completely down to personal preferences. Make sure your contact details are up to date, and you can read more about the e-submission settings by following the link on this slide. So now that we've got it set up, we're at a position where we can check for notifications and, where required, apply the changes. And I'm just going to run through a list of the different forms that you can receive within the IR Secure Mailbox in your software. So the first two are tax code notifications. P6 forms is a notice for an employer to change an employee's tax code, and often also includes previous pay and tax. So you typically receive a P6 notice during the tax year, and it's often for employees that came to you as a new starter but didn't have a P45 at the time. The second one, the P9 notice, is a notice to change an employee's tax code at the start of a tax year. So they tend to be sent out between January and March at the end of the previous tax year, and they take effect from the 6th of April. You've then got your student loan and postgraduate loan start and stop notices. That's an SL1, PGL1 for the start notice, SL2 or PGL2 for a stop notice. And then there's a couple of responses that you might get if you ever submit an NI number verification request. So either confirming that you're using the correct national insurance number, or asking you to check or to change it to a different number. So those are the main forms that you can receive. There's also some generic notifications that you might see if, for example, you've made a late submission or a late payment. So again, more info on these types of forms is available in our help center. But now let's take a look at how we actually retrieve these notices. So back into the demo. I'm actually at the start of a tax year for this demo because I wanted to show you the P9 notifications, which I say come through at the end of a tax year. So I'm about to start the new tax year in this example. And before running my payroll, I'm going to check for any new notices that I might have received. So I would head back to the e-submissions tasks. And then just underneath the e-submission settings is where you find the Secure Mailbox. So go ahead and click on that option. That then opens up in a separate window And if you'd selected the option to automatically check for notifications, you'd see a progress bar move across as it connects to the PAYE online service and checks for anything new. But if you haven't ticked that box, you will need to click the new mail option. And then you will see a progress bar. You don't see it in this demo, because I'm actually in a demo environment, but it then goes away and checks for the various notifications. So as you can see, I've received 2 P9 notices, so change of tax code for the new tax year, and I have 1 SL1 notice, which is the student loan start notice. And if you click on any of these subfolders, you can see the details of the 2 employees just here. And then if you click onto a notification, you can open it on screen, and that will give you the details of the change of tax code. So this tax code is changing to 1257L, effective from the 6th of April. And if I go into the other one, that one's changing to a K code, K750, again, effective from the 6th of April. Now, because these notices have effective from dates, they can be applied ahead of a pay run, and that new tax code would take effect from the effective from date. But in terms of in-year tax code changes, because it might include previous pay and tax, it's probably worth only applying them at the point they need to be applied. So I've just opened those individually, but you'll notice there are some little icons up here where we can clear a selection and swap it. So that's one way of selecting multiple notifications. And if I click open again, you can see it lists both of the notices, and it's just a case of clicking apply, which will directly apply those changes. Now feel free to print them for your own records if you want to. I'm just going to go ahead and apply them now. I'm going to click yes to continue, and you can see both of these have been successful. So if I then click onto close, I can then do something similar with my student loan start notice. So this was for employee 10. You can see it's starting from 6th of April. It also sets the plan type, whether that's plan 1, 2, or 4 for a student loan. And again, if I click apply, it'll make the changes directly. And again, that one has been successful. Now you may have noticed that these notifications still appear within the secure mailbox, but don't worry, they have been applied. And if we close out and then go back in to the same area, that refreshes the mailbox, and you can see that those notifications have now disappeared. And you can see the details of what you have applied from your e-submissions log, just here on the left-hand side, here on the applied mail tab. So you can see I had a bit of play around this morning with this, but these are the notifications that I've done just now. So just to show you the changes that have been made to the employee, first one was employee 2. If I go on to the tax code area, it's now set to 1257L. You can see previously in this drill down, they've been on 1288L. So they've had a change in circumstances resulting in that tax code change. And the other one, K code, if I look at the drill down, that was previously a D0 code. And for employee 10, the student loan details have been added, as well as the plan type and the start date. So you would then complete your payroll in the usual way. Any changes to tax codes that have become effective will kick in from that effective from date. I'm just going to go ahead and update the records. And then you would do your FPS submission in the usual way. So I'm just going to process the next pay run to show you some of the other notifications that can come through. So if I just set my process date to 31st of May, which would have been the next pay date in this example, I could go back to e-submissions and open the IR Secure Mailbox. And this is something you should get into the habit of doing at the start of each pay run. But for those of you that use the payroll process map, which you can access from Change View here at the top, You will see that IR Secure Mailbox is one of the options in the process map as well. So that would kind of remind you to check for those notifications if you're following that process. So again, I've opened up the mailbox, so I'm going to click New Mail. And you can say this time, I've got some new notices come through. So a P6, it's a tax code change, mid-tax year. And the SL2 here is a student loan stop notice. So looking at the P6 first, if I just highlight it and click open, you can see there's a new tax code, but this one also comes with previous pay and previous tax. So maybe this was a new starter that didn't have a P45 at the time, and everything's caught up in the RTI system and you've been sent the notification. So I'm going to click apply. That's effective from the 6th of May, and I'll click yes to continue. And that one again was successful. And student loan stop notice tells you what the stop date is. And again, we can apply that one directly. So looking at those employees, new employee here now has the change of tax code. So previously they were on emergency tax code 1257L on a week 1 basis. And now in the year-to-date values, we also have the previous pay and tax. So that's been added automatically by applying that notice, as well as changing the tax code. And it was employee 1 where we had the student loan stop notice. It simply added the end date for us to stop those deductions. So pretty simple to use. Let's just recap that process on the slides. So first of all, you would go into the IR Secure Mailbox, either from the e-submissions tasks or from the process map. If it doesn't automatically check for new notices, you'd click onto New Mail, and then you can select the relevant notice you want to apply, click onto Open, it'll show you the details, print them out if you want to, and then it's the Apply option at the bottom that will make those changes. And as long as the national insurance number is found within your payroll, that will be successful, as that is the field that's used to identify the employee. So it's not just checking for notifications you can do with the Secure Mailbox. So I wanted to briefly mention its other function, and that is all around the P46 Car Form, which is used to notify HMRC when you provide an employee with a car available for private use. So it's a benefit in kind. So it needs to be submitted at the point you provide a new car, withdraw a car, or you provide an additional car to an employee. So I'll give you a quick demo on this one as well. It's not something as common as the tax code notices, but a little known feature that I thought I'd tell you about. So let's just go into an employee record and head to the Cars and Fuel tab. So this is where you can record details of a company car that you've provided an employee. I'm going to very quickly put some details in. So car registration, make and model, date of registration, engine size and CO2 emissions. Got the list price and the date the car was first made available to the employee. So I'm just going to put the 1st of May in this example. And if I click on to finish, that's added a car record. Can be used to work out cash equivalent values, either for your P11D or if you're payrolling the car, the cash equivalent for the current tax year. But what we're using it for is to submit a P46 car to HMRC. So if I click onto P46 car, you can see that the box is ticked to say that it's required. And the reason we need to send a P46 car is we're providing this employee with a car which is available for private use. So as long as this information is filled in, you can save the employee record. And what you'd then do is you'd go to the IR Secure Mailbox, and you'll see, if you look closely, there's a little arrow next to HMRC submissions, and then we can submit the details of that company car. So just a case of selecting it and clicking submit. That'll take you through the internet submission process, and that will be sent to HMRC, notifying them that you have provided this benefit in kind. So that has now been successful, and you can see it appears in the submitted items area of the mailbox. So yeah, that was your P46 car. You need to create the car record first. Go into the P46 car option. So tick the box and the reason why you're submitting one. And then within the mailbox, you find it under HMRC submissions, select the details, and you would click submit. And again, there's more info available about this feature following the link on screen. So that's pretty much it when we're talking about IR Secure Mailbox, but I did want to finish with my top tips on the mailbox and try and give you maybe a demo on some of these. So I've got 4 of them for you today. Tip number 1, if you have a lot of notices that you need to apply, for example, if you're preparing for the new tax year and there's been a lot of tax code changes that have come through, it is possible to select multiple notices and apply them all at the same time. So you saw one of the ways in the demo earlier, there's those little clear and swap buttons, but much like selecting files in Windows, you can also use either the control key, so holding control and clicking on individual notices will highlight multiple notifications, or you can highlight all notices in a list by holding Shift and then clicking on the first and last notice. So once they're all selected, you can open them as a batch and you can apply them. Similar tip for tip 2. If you've got a lot of old notifications, if you've just started using the Secure Mailbox and you want to get rid of all of the historical stuff you've dealt with, you can select multiple notices as described above. So holding Shift and clicking on the first and last one in a list would probably be the way you did this. And then you can click the delete option to delete them all at the same time. Top tip number 3, if you notice that some of the information is still there after you've applied or deleted it, you just need to refresh your Secure Mailbox. So you saw this in my demo as well. Once I'd applied them, they were still sitting there. But if you close and reopen the mailbox, it refreshes it and it removes anything that you've applied or deleted. And tip number 4, checking applied mail. We saw this earlier as well. In the e-submissions log from the e-submissions task, you'll be able to go onto the applied mail tab. And from there, you'll see any notifications you've applied and when you did that. So those are my 4 top tips for using the Secure Mailbox. So that's pretty much it for the presentation, but we have got some time to stick around and answer any additional questions that you might have. While we're waiting for those to come through, I just want to mention some of the further support that you have access to. So first thing to mention is our online help center, which you can access in your browser from sage.co.uk/help or via the help center icon within Sage 50 Payroll. From here, you can search our knowledge base. So do a keyword search for IR Secure Mailbox. You'll find the relevant articles. You can read our curated support guides. There's a webinars option right at the top there, and that will take you to a list of our upcoming webinars. And just to give you an idea of what's coming up, you'll see today's session, get to know pensions next week, get your payroll done, and Sage HR online services. So they're the next ones that are coming up. And we also have a few in the first week of September, the first full week of September, where we've got our big Sage Payroll quiz. So something you might want to get involved in early next month. So as well as the webinars, you'll find short videos in our help centre, and if you need to contact our support team, you'll see all the best contact options to answer your query from there. Also want to give a quick shout out to Sage University at sageu.com. Once you've created your profile at Sage U, you can access a wealth of e-learning, certification courses, and bite-sized learning. So it's all available free of charge. You just need to create that profile by signing in with a Sage ID. And then you can dip in and out of that e-learning course to brush up on your payroll skills. So like I say, we've got a few minutes to answer any final questions. So I will shortly go on mute to give Calvin a hand with that. If you'd like a copy of our handouts from the session today, you can get those from the documents icon. So do grab a copy before you leave. If you are leaving now, thanks so much for joining us at the webinar today. I hope you've picked up a few hints and tips, and you'll maybe consider using this feature once you've switched to electronic notifications, if you haven't already done so, as it could be a good time saver for you. It also helps eliminate any of those manual errors if you're applying them manually. So I'm just going to go on mute briefly to help out with those questions, but I will come back just before we wrap things up. Okay, so thanks everyone who sent a question through. I hope we've been able to get the answers out to you, and thanks everyone for joining us at the webinar today. We are just about out of time, so I'm going to wrap things up and just thank you once again for your time. Do stay safe out there, and we'd look forward to seeing you on some of our other webinars soon. Goodbye for now.